Okay, let's talk about pairs of random variables. So we've built up a pretty good understanding of a single random variable. So we talked about discrete random variables, continuous random variables, and now I want to study multiple random variables. Let's say I have x1 through xn, and they're all random quantities. What I want to understand are the relationships or dependencies between these random variables. Now, why might I care about this? Well, maybe what I'm doing is measuring a few things and then trying to predict the values of some unobserved variables. Or maybe I am trying to determine whether something is absent or present. So maybe there's a condition I'm looking for or a sample I'm examining, and I've collected some measurements and I just have a binary decision to make, and I'm trying to make the best decision based on these variables. So I want to understand what kind of relationships exist between these random quantities. This is more general than a function, right? So we can think about functions that relate different variables, but here there's also randomness. So it's more than just a deterministic function. And instead of focusing on the case with n random variables, we're going to look exclusively now at the 2 case. So I have n equals 2, and we're going to just say that I have x and y instead of x1 and x2 because it's more convenient to just write that down. And in general, we cannot think of y as a function of x. As I said, it's more general than a function, because if it's just a function, so let's say you have x and you're trying to predict y, and y is a deterministic function of x, well, you can just compute it. Whereas in this case, if x and y are both random, you might be able to predict some of y, but not all of it. Okay, as an example, let's say x is the thing that you want, and y is a noisy version that you observe. Or x and y are the temperatures in Boston on 2 consecutive days. Or maybe you're trying to predict movie ratings, and x and y are the ratings of a single movie by 2 friends. So there's something you can predict, but it's not completely deterministic. Okay, visually what's going on here is we have this sample space, and the sample space has these points. So these are the outcomes in the sample space. I just have 4 of them. And what we're doing with pairs of random variables is mapping these samples into points on the plane. Okay, so they're just going to some points on the plane, and I can represent these mappings by x and y, right? And formally, what we need underneath this is the CDF, the cumulative distribution function, and this is going to help us unify our treatment of discrete and continuous random variables. But the CDF is particularly annoying to deal with for 2 or more random variables. It's much more convenient to deal with something like the PMF or PDF, and that's what we're going to do. So for discrete random variables, we're going to quickly use the CDF to get the PMF and just work with that and forget about the CDF. Same thing for continuous random variables. The CDF is just going to yield the PDF, and we're going to work with that and forget about the CDF. But just to be clear, we're going to define the CDF, okay? So the CDF, or the joint cumulative distribution function, is what's going to be underneath everything, and after this slide, you can just forget about it. So the joint cumulative distribution function, which again, we just sometimes call for short the CDF or joint CDF, that's this capital F of xy, of a pair of random variables, x and y. So this is the probability that x is less than or equal to the value little x, and y is less than or equal to the value little y. Okay, so formally, it's the probability of the outcomes in the sample space such that the mapping x is less than or equal to little x, and the mapping y is less than or equal to little y. So the shorthand for this, it's the intersection between the set x is less than or equal to x and y is less than or equal to y. And sometimes, or often, you will see this intersection written as a comma. Okay, so this comma here implicitly means and. Both conditions need to hold. So whenever you see a comma in a probability expression, then you should just take for granted that that means and. This has some properties. I'll quickly mention them, but not to worry too much. It's non-negative. It normalizes to 1. So if you take x and y to infinity, you get 1. it's non-decreasing. So if you take values of x and y that are larger, then the value that's joint CDF should not go down. And it marginalizes. So if you take y to be infinity or x to be infinity, then you'll get back to the original CDFs for those random variables because you've taken one of the other random variables out of the picture. Okay, let's get to something we're actually going to use. So the joint probability mass function is what we're going to use for discrete random variables. So formally, the joint PMF or probability mass function, and we write this as capital P of xy. So here we have a pair of discrete random variables. So they're individually discrete, and now we're describing them as a pair. So this joint PMF gives us the probability x is equal to little x and y is equal to little y. So formally, that's the probability of the outcomes in the sample space that get mapped to x and y. But we usually just write this as, say, the intersection that x is equal to x and y is equal to y, or we just replace intersection with a comma like we did before. And the range is just the set of values it's possible to see. So basically the values where the probability is positive. Okay, so values in the plane where you get a positive value for this joint PMF. And we could have derived this direct from the joint CDF, but honestly, we don't want to work with the joint CDF. We want to work with the joint PMF, so we're going to just stick to this framework here. Okay, here are the properties that we should actually keep in mind. So the properties of the joint PMF are that it is non-negative. So whatever value you plug in, you will not get a negative number. It sums up to 1. So normalization says the total probability is 1. And additivity, the probability that you fall into a set is just by summing up the pairs in that set. So if I have pairs in this set B and I add up their PMF values, that gives me the probability of falling into B. And I also define this idea of marginal PMFs, P of x and P of y. These are the PMFs for the individual random variables x and y. So this is what we were used to dealing with before. We had a single random variable and it had a PMF. So how do I go from the joint PMF back to the original marginal PMFs? Well, what I need to do is just sum up the joint PMF over the undesired variable to get a marginal PMF. Okay, so here I would be summing up over y to get P of x. So I'm taking y out of the picture. And to get the PMF of y, I sum up over x. I take x out of the picture. Keep in mind, the marginal PMFs are not enough to determine the joint PMF. So if I only give you the marginal PMFs and no other information, you cannot get the joint PMF because the marginal PMFs describe the individual behavior of the randomness for each variable. They don't describe how they depend on each other. That's only captured by this joint PMF. So the joint PMF is a full description of the pair, and the marginals are the individual descriptions of the individual variables. One way to visualize this is as a table. Okay, so I can think about the joint PMF in my head as a big table of probability values. Okay, so I have x and y. So let's say I have values y1 through yn and x1 up to xm, and I have this big table filled up with values. And here I'm kind of leaving it abstract. I'm just saying these are the PMF values on each row. So I'm just writing out all the possible entries here. These could take any values I like, okay, subject to a few conditions, but I can just think of this as a table of probabilities. What if I want to, say, get the marginal of y? Well, what I'm going to do is sum up over these columns, and I'm going to get P of y1. So what I've done is summed up out all of the x values. So I've added up all the probabilities over x, fixing y to y1, and that gives me the probability that y is equal to y1. And I can just repeat this, and I'll get the description of y by itself. Okay? The other thing I could do is I could sum up over the rows, and that's going to give me P of x. So I would get, to get P of x at x1, I would sum up over all the values of y, where x is equal to x1, same thing for x2, same thing for x3, and so on. Okay, so if I did this, then I would get this case-by-case formula for the marginal of x. The properties of this table is that it can have no negative entries. That's non-negativity. It normalizes, so if I sum up all the table entries, I should get 1. And additivity means I can add up subsets of entries. So if I identify the entries I'm interested in and I add up those values, that gives me the probability that I could take on those values. I can also visualize the joint PMF as a particular 3D plot, okay? So here's a 3D plot, just an example visualization. So I have the plane here, and then I have the height going up is the probability. So non-negativity tells me I can't have negative values, and normalization tells me the heights have to add up to 1. What if I want to get the PMF of x individually? Well, all I do is I project along to the x-axis. So I sum up and I get the values here. So if you look at this, you can see that the heights of these are adding up to get the heights of this plot x. So I had 0 in this first entry. Then I had a lot of things adding up. So I had a very high point in the PMF of x. Then some small things. I got a small point, and then 0 again, then another high point, and then 0 again. I could do the same thing with y. I could project along the y-axis to get the marginal PMF of y. So I only retain the y-axis and the height. And then I'm going to get this different PMF, which captures what y would do individually. Okay? So you can see that basically this alone does not tell you how x and y are interacting. It just tells you how they look on their own. Okay, let's finally do an example. I'm going to give you a table. I'm going to fill in the table with some entries for this joint PMF, and then we're going to work out a couple of quantities. So x and y are 1 and 1 with probability 1/3, and then 0 and 0 for the other two entries. Y is 2 and x is 1 with probability 1/6. They're 2 and 2 with probability 1/6, and they're 2 and 3 with probability 1/3. All right. Then to sum up over the columns, I'll get the marginal PMF of y. Okay, so y can be either 1 with probability 1/3 or 2 with probability 2/3. Okay, so there are different ways in which y can be 2. X could be 1, 2, or 3, but that doesn't matter if I'm asking only about y being equal to 2. I just add up those probabilities and I get the probability that y is equal to 2. There's only one way that y can be 1. That's when x is 1. But again, I don't care about that when I'm looking just at the description of y. So I just add up those values. We'll repeat the same calculation, and we are going to get the marginal PMF of x. Okay, so to do that, we're going to sum up over these rows. So to get x is when I add up 1/3 and 1/6 to get 1/2. Here I just get 1/6, and here I get 1/3. Okay. And let's do something a little bit more involved. So now we have these marginal PMFs. We just did that to show how that works. But now I want to calculate something more interesting. What's the probability that y is greater than or equal to x? Okay, so this is a bit more challenging than some of the things we've seen before. So we know how to calculate things like x is less than or equal to some value, say 2. All right, but what does this mean that x is less than or equal to y? Both of these quantities are random, so this is kind of an odd thing to ask about. And you staring at this, you might not know how to proceed. And the thing I want you to keep in mind, whenever you see any kind of condition in this probability expression, is to remember that any probability question that anyone asks you, okay, however it's written, it's always about membership in a set, okay? So in this case, it's implicitly about the probability that you belong to a particular set, okay? So here, it's asking that x is less than or equal to y, but this is about a particular set of pairs x and y where x happens to be less than or equal to y. Okay, so this is actually shorthand for this particular event, the pairs x and y that belong to B, and B has this form. Okay, so here are the pairs where x is less than or equal to y. 1, 1, 1, 2, and 2, 2. Okay, there are other pairs. So we could also look at the pair where x is 3 and y is 2. Okay, but there x is greater than y, and so it doesn't belong to this set. All right, so only 3 out of the 4 viable pairs here, The other two have probability 0. So only 3 out of the 4 pairs with positive probability satisfy this condition, and those are the ones that go into B. So now to get the probability that x is less than or equal to y, I'm really asking about the probability that xy belongs to this particular set, and I had to work out that set. And so all I'm going to do now is add up the probability of the joint PMF over this particular set of pairs, which I've worked out. So I add up the probability of the joint PMF at 1, 1 plus the joint PMF at 1, 2 plus the joint PMF at 2, 2. So that's going to be just looking up a third plus a sixth plus a sixth, and that's 2/3. Okay, so basically the trickiest thing about these pairs of random variables is remembering that when you're asked a probability question that looks like some kind of strange condition, that you should translate that to membership of pairs in a set and working out what that set should be.